Welcome to the Gyroplane Flying Podcast.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Gyroplane Flying Podcast. This is your host, Joe Covelli. I'm also owner and president of Air Command Gyroplanes and Skywheels Rotor Blades. It's a pleasure to have you with us. I did gyroplane flying for a number of years, and it's great to be back. And previously, we always recorded gyroplane flying, and we would have various guests on the program talking about maintenance, training, when we are testing the Skywheel rotor blades. And it was a lot of fun to do those podcasts. And so this time we're coming to you live, and I'd like to continue doing these as a live version so that we can get feedback from you, our listening audience, and people interested in gyroplane flying. It's a lot of fun. Obviously, we want to be communicating with all of you on what we're doing and the plans that we have going forward. And so it's great to be back with you in this forum. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us. Our goal with today's podcast is to update you on the activities that we have been working on the last several years with Air Command gyroplanes, Skywheel rotor blades, and of course the Polaris engine. And also I'd like to share a bit of my story and my journey here with gyroplane flying as well. Your comments and questions are always welcome. We do have the chat box open, and so feel free to shoot us a message during the program today, and that would be absolutely terrific. So let's get started here. And so what I'd like to do is share with you an update. We'd like to do these monthly and more frequently if possible, maybe every other week in the Gyroplane Flying Podcast Forum. Our appreciation to those who have contacted us about our work with Air Command gyroplanes and Skywheel rotor blades and the Polaris engine. It has been terrific to hear from many of you and get your interest, find out what you're doing, learn about your journey and the interest that you have in getting into this wonderful part of aviation. I like to think of it as an entry point into aviation. So, and also, I would like to remind you, if you are interested in receiving our e-newsletter, we just started that again, and our first one went out yesterday, and it was a good update as far as where we're at on our activities, promoting the podcasts and the topics we'll talk about tonight. We also listed some special priced clearance items you might want to consider as Christmas gifts. So feel free to check out aircommand.com for all that information. And then down at the bottom of the homepage, or actually any page, you can sign up for our e-newsletter, and we'll be glad to send that to you. Of course, you can unsubscribe at any time as well, so don't feel like it's a lifelong thing. You can unsubscribe when you want to. But we'd love to share it with you, and again, appreciate you joining us this evening. I want to thank everybody that has contacted us over these last several years about our work and about our products, and with your interest to purchase our products and use them. As you know, Air Command started out in 1984 with its first flight. There are over 3,000 aircraft out there, so we do support the Air Command aircrafts that are out there as well. And so it's great to keep in touch with everybody and also talk about our new products. And we're going to cover things probably at the 30,000 foot level tonight, just give you a general overview. But in the weeks and months ahead, we'll, of course, continue this forum and bring you more information as we move forward. So if I could just indulge you for a little bit here, I do want to share my journey with you. It's kind of interesting being in the position I am. I talk with people all over the world, and it's interesting to hear that everybody has a journey or part of their story in what they're doing, how they got involved in gyroplanes, what they're looking to do. And if you're somebody that's just starting out, we would always suggest going for a discovery flight. Find somebody that's in your area or someone you'd like to team up with, potentially an instructor, and go for a discovery flight. So I have to share with you, my first flight in a gyroplane was in 2010, and Larry Neal was somebody that was very, very well known in the industry. And he owned a company called the Butterfly in Texas. I spent 3 days with Larry in 2010. I enjoyed every day with him. a wealth of information and knowledge. And the first couple flights, I have to tell you, I was a little nervous with them. But as I understood the technology and Larry conveyed to me what it was all about and how things were working, I really kind of settled in with it and really enjoyed it from that point on. And it was interesting after I purchased Air Command and I looked at the historical information that I received when I purchased the company. There were handwritten notes from Larry with different suggestions to Harold Smith, the owner. You know, you might want to think of that, do this. I knew he was involved in the centerline thrust upgrade kit. So having known Larry and having him give me my introduction to gyroplane flying, I really appreciated the things that he was sharing. So a friend of mine showed me his two-seat side-by-side Air Command, and I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I reached out to the company one day, and I spoke with Doug Smith, who was Harold's son, and Doug told me the company was for sale. I should consider that if I'm looking to purchase a gyroplane, and I appreciated his honesty. A few months later, I traveled to Texas with my friend Tim and had a chance to meet Harold and Doug and others in the operation and to see it firsthand. And I really fell in love with Air Command and what I was seeing. And so the rest is history from there. We ended up purchasing Air Command in 2017 from Harold. Air Command was in Cato Mills, Texas for 25 years under Harold's leadership and ownership. And the wonderful thing about what Harold brought to it is he was an aeronautical engineer. So immediately when Harold purchased the company, he looked at how he could improve it, how he could make it safer to fly, all of those important considerations. And unfortunately, with the photo you see here, that was the day that I purchased the company. But unfortunately, 10 weeks after this photo was taken, Harold was hit by a driver who crossed the center line 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. He was going home, and unfortunately this driver struck Harold head on, and Harold ultimately died with that accident. And so we lost a real good patriot and friend 10 weeks after we purchased the company. But Doug Smith was terrific, told us, don't worry about anything. I'll make sure I see you through the transition and beyond. And Doug has done that for sure all these years. And I want to thank him for that. As a tribute to Harold Smith, by the way, his family found a treasure trove of drones. See, Harold was an engineer, a lieutenant colonel with the military, and his emphasis was drone technology and testing. And after Harold retired from the military, he went on a scavenger hunt, I would have to say, and purchased a lot of drones. Well, come to find out, after Harold's passing, the family found a treasure trove, like I said, barns full of all of this drone technology. And they ended up opening a museum in honor of Harold and his legacy in Cato Mills, Texas. And we'll have Doug on and some of his family to share with us what they've done to recognize Harold and his contribution over the years and creating what is America's largest drone museum in the United States. So just moving on. So that's what happened with Air Command. I came into it with really three goals after purchasing the company. One was to refresh and update the look. Another was to add additional safety features and to provide good value and offer it at an entry point into aviation. I think gyroplanes is a great entry point into aviation. I also want to do this real quick. If you don't mind, I do want to turn on the chat. And if you do have a message you want to send to us, feel free to do it in the chat, and I'll look over here and we'll answer some questions throughout the program and for sure at the end. And I want to say hi to Craig and Stephen. Thanks, gentlemen, for sending a chat. We appreciate you being on with us tonight. So those were the three goals with coming into it. And we wanted to make sure we did it right. So when we purchased Air Command, Harold and Doug made sure we had an aircraft as our starting point. So they built an aircraft, and there you see a photo of it. That's from 2018. And I'm sure many of you who have flown Air Command will realize that is a centerline thrust Air Command single seat gyroplane. Same tail that was made for all these many years since they started in 1984. And they raised the seat to a centerline thrust. And there's reasons why Harold did that as an aeronautical engineer. They changed the mast, they changed the joystick assembly, and those things are all highlighted on our website at aircommand.com. But he really believed in the centerline thrust, and we'll continue with that as well. But this was a great starting point for us. But the real challenge came in to be, how do we duplicate it? And the reason I say that is we had limited drawings. So the only drawings we received were of the rotor head, the joystick assembly, and also the pre-rotator. All the tubes, the flat stock, all those other parts, we didn't have any drawings. So here's a picture of Keith Lemire. Keith's our senior design engineer, and I've been working with Keith for 7 years, and I've known Keith for 30 years, so I've known him a long time. And he asked me a question. He said, I heard you have a gyroplane. Can I see it? I heard you bought a company. So I showed Keith. He was thrilled about it, and he joined the team. And for the last, like I said, 7 years, we've been working on updating the drawings and actually creating many, many, many new drawings. And as you see here is a photo in his office with the disassembled aircraft that he pretty much reverse engineered. And so that was our first effort, was in order to be able to create something, we have to have very good technical drawings. And I have an example of our technical drawings. If you're not an engineer or a person that deals with this type of thing, I just wanted to show you. So here is one of our actuator arms for the pre-rotator. And as you can see, it's very detailed, a lot of measurements, a lot of diameters, radiuses, things like that. There are some really complex drawings that we have, and that's one of the easier ones. So once we created all of these drawings, it allowed us to assemble an aircraft, as you see, model it, and put it into SolidWorks. So all of our drawings are created in SolidWorks, which is a very professional engineering and design type program. And so we call this a model, and this model takes all of those parts, puts it together, and then you can manipulate it and have a 3D view and things like that. But the important thing with creating all of these drawings, and we've created hundreds of drawings, but the important thing is it allowed us to establish a quality control program. In order to manufacture something, you have to manufacture it to the specifications, which we take ownership of the specifications. And that allows us to have a quality control program to make sure things are made right and to spec. And then that allowed us to create the model that you see there. So when we introduced our new aircraft back, probably 3 years ago, one of the questions was, is this an artist's rendition? Is this something that was just kind of created? There's really nothing behind it. No, that is not correct. So this is not an artist's rendition. This is actually the complete model of the aircraft exported out of Keith's computer. So everything you see there, down to the nuts, bolts, and washers, is an actual part that is in his model, which is really phenomenal. And there's thousands of parts when you take everything into account. I will say the only thing that we had our designer, and we worked with a fiberglass designer, the only thing we asked him to do was just create a sketch of the full enclosure, because we knew down the line as we continue this process, we will probably make changes, which we did. And I can tell you one of the significant changes that we made early on after realizing some things, but this was already drawn, is that we wanted to have enough headroom inside the enclosure so somebody could wear a helmet or, of course, a headset. And we sized it using an individual who is 6'5". So our model did change, and I think it changed for the better, because we can get someone comfortably in the cabin with a helmet on who is 6'5" and adjustable rudder pedals. So I have to say, out of everything, the only thing that we created as an image was the full enclosure. But if we strip that back and we look at all of the parts, including what we call the pilot hoop, which surrounds the pilot, and we have the hoops around the pilot's legs, the instrument panel, the tail section, all the tubes and the flat stock, and all the bolts, nuts, and washers. This is directly from Key's computer, and the reason I want to talk about this a minute is to assure you all of these parts are drawn, and we're showing them to you in how they would be assembled. And I think that's pretty impressive. So we have made some changes over the last couple years to change the model a little bit. And so when we start coming out with our marketing effort and getting everything ramped up with that to lead us into sales, we'll be updating this so that it's more accurate with the changes that we've made. We're also showing this model with the Rotex 582, and as many of us know, that engine was discontinued about 3 to 4 years ago. However, you still can purchase that engine, but we're not going to be showing that going forward since that's a discontinued product. So that would be the single seat Air Command, which we've named it Integrity. We've named the aircraft Integrity, so that's our Integrity single seat gyroplane. So pleased to share that with you. So if you do have a question, please feel free to send us a chat. All right. So all the part drawings are done. We're machining the last of the 3 airframe parts. So that's the update on the machining part of it. Once the instrument panel fiberglass parts are currently being made and almost done. We just have a couple to go. The instrument panel faceplate needs to be built, and that's something that we'll be working on next. And we are working on the aircraft airframe pricing at this point in time. So here's the next thing, which would be the Polaris engine. And we have received a tremendous amount of interest on the Polaris engine. We've been working with the Polaris engine for 6 to 7 years now. We've had it on the test stand for a couple years, and this has consumed a lot of our time, but we feel it's the right direction to go. And really what started this all for me is when I read in the in the Rotax owner's manual for the 582 that the engine was subject to quit. I thought, why do I want to get involved in selling that engine which is subject to quit? And I just didn't think that sent the right message to the aviation community. So with a conscience in mind and also being close to the Polaris company where they're located, I thought it would be an easy thing to do would to be use those engines. And I was a little surprised because it took us a lot of work, and we had to solve a lot of things, and we did. We came through and actually engineered an adapter that we connect to the engine, to a gearbox, and then the propeller. Without those things, it definitely will not fly, and it won't even start. So we displayed our engine, which you see a picture here, the Polaris engine with the adapter and the gearbox and the propeller in 2023 and 2024 at AirVenture in Oshkosh. And we also appreciated the coverage that the Experimental Aircraft channel provided us on YouTube. Just absolutely terrific response. So we've been continuing to work on this, and we are almost finished with it. We've retained the services of a harmonics and vibration consultant. We're doing a high-level test, and the analysis is being completed right now. And we're looking to begin test flights here first part of 2026. And really the good news for the industry is when we did our initial testing, we are looking at the 85 horsepower engine, and we decided to move up to the 100 horsepower engine. And the reason is very simple. It's the same footprint, the same size as the 85 horse, but you're getting more power for the weight, and it just makes a lot more sense. So that's the good news, is we are going to use the 100 horsepower engine. And I have some really good news to share with you as well. We started working on this in February, but we needed to build a custom Polaris wiring harness that works with the engine and integrate it into our airframe with the specific measurements that we need, specific connectors. And the great news is that wiring harness arrived 2 weeks ago, and we did our test fit, and everything went perfect, fit perfect. So now we're moving to the next step, which is installing the engine on the airframe. And once those last remaining parts come in, we'll be able to finish that up and then start to program the ECU or the computer that runs the engine. So very exciting, and we'll provide more information on that in the weeks and months ahead. And my final area to provide an update to you on is the Skywheel rotor blades. I want to just regress a little bit back to, oh gosh, it was a number of years ago. Ernie Boyette contacted me. It was around 2018. And he mentioned that he recently sold Dragon Wings, and he really was unsure if those are going to be made again. And because Skywheels was manufactured from 1984, 1985 to around 2002, or oh no, it was longer than that. It was the early 2000s, and then they went quiet for about 18 years, and so Air Command from in the mid 2000s to 2017, they were working with Ernie and buying Dragon Wing rotor blades. Well, when Ernie told me that, I needed to find another option because I know I didn't want to sell go-karts and not have rotor blades. I just didn't want to go that route. So, and others in the industry were very helpful. They offered their rotor blades, but I felt that we had to be in a position to do our own thing. And I was told by Tom Milton in Chicago, which I really appreciated Tom telling me this, that Air Command at one time used Skywheels. And he told me about Skywheels and how good of a rotor blade they were. And so I reached out to Jim McCutcheon, who is the founder and first owner of Skywheels. And Jim was terrific. He introduced me to Jim Lizet, who is the current owner, and he had them in Los Angeles. And Jim Lizet was really looking to get those blades back on the market. And he couldn't think of a better organization than Air Command because of the connection. And Jim had at one time owned an Air Command gyroplane with Skywheel rotor blades. And so he knew the importance of that connection. And I want to extend my appreciation to Jim Lizet and Jim McCutcheon for helping me get started in manufacturing rotor blades. There's a lot of history with those rotor blades, but there was also a lot of tribal knowledge we needed to know in the manufacturing of them and the technical requirements to make them. And of course, we did the flight testing back in 2020 in Missouri for 3-4 months, which all went terrific. And we knew it would because it was such a well-proven product. Skywheels, of course, is a high inertia rotor blade, stored energy. It's great for beginning pilots because when you come down to land, if you flare a little too much, you don't want to bleed off too much energy. And so these blades store energy and help you kind of push through it. So they are a high inertia rotor blade, and that means safety and performance. And if we fast forward to right now, 2025, manufacturing has started for Skywheel rotor blades. We are accepting sales orders. We will be coming out with our pricing here in November, and we are looking to begin sales first part of the year. So we're getting everything lined up at this point. I think it's really exciting, and it's great to be back manufacturing Skywheels again. I'd like to share a comment that was provided to me from Greg Bradley. Greg's our senior test pilot, and Greg shared these comments with us during the testing of Skywheels, and he made this comment, and I wanted to share it with you. The new rotors were responsive and held their energy just like the original Skywheels. It's nice to have them made again. We really appreciate all the work that Greg has done. I'd like to also share with you some recent news. Back in July, we received approval from the United Kingdom with the LLA, and the LLA and the Civil Aviation Authority, the CAA, did certify Skywheel rotor blades under Section T, which is exciting. It was a 5 to 6 year effort, and I would like to extend my appreciation to Francis Mole in the UK. Francis was really determined to make sure this happened. He was seeing rotor blades in the UK delaminating just because it was hard to get new rotor blades. And so he wanted to bring Skywheels back and refresh the rotor blades that were out there with new rotor blades. And he just drove it, and just a terrific person to work with. So Francis is the dealer distributor in the United Kingdom for us. And there's his website, phoenixaero.co.uk. If you'd like to, if you're in that part of the world and you would like to look at acquiring a set of Skywheel rotor blades, please reach out to Francis. And we again wish to thank him for all of the hard work that he put in to the analysis and having the Civil Aviation Authority senior test pilot test the rotor blades and sign off as a certified part. Just terrific. So just in summary, here's our priorities. Manufacture Skywheels and start sales. Complete the engine testing and start sales. Complete the airframe pricing and flight tests and begin to accept pre-orders. We'll start accepting pre-orders once we have successfully done the flight tests. And to a lot of people who are looking to upgrade their existing Air Command, what we call lowboy, which is low to the ground, has a high thrust line, we'll be coming out with the centerline thrust kit, upgrade kit in 2026. So those are our priorities. And again, our goals for the airframe were to refresh the look, add safety enhancements, offer value at an entry point, at a great entry point into aviation. So that summarizes everything for the update as to where we are right now. If anyone has any comments or questions on the chat, they are welcome to send those to us. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping things up here fairly quickly. I do want to remind you that we will be doing the podcast again here in a couple weeks, and we will, of course, share with you the timing of that, when we'll have it, and then we'll share it in advance. I'm looking to have Keith Lemire, our senior design engineer, join me. Keith will be explaining the new airframe, some of the features and benefits that we have added, some of the changes that we've made, and we'll take a very technical deep dive into looking at the various options that will be available on the new Air Command gyroplane we call Integrity. And I think you'll be quite pleased with what you see with adjustable rudder pedals. We've made some changes to the joystick, of course, the tail section, and things like that. So on behalf of Air Command and Skywheels, this is Joe Covelli, your host for Gyroplane Flying. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this evening. And this, of course, will be available on our other channels as a recorded playback for on-demand listening. And you're always welcome to reach out and contact us. Our email is info@aircommand.com. Thank you very much for joining us on the program this evening.